I do not master martial arts to win fights, but I do it to conquer myself. I am strong because I know my weaknesses. You can only be as strong as your weakest link. So understanding your weaknesses is very important.
Welcome back to Mulligan Brothers Interviews. And today's interview is a request from you guys. A few months ago, we shot with White Dragon, Matt Jane, and so many of you wanted to see follow-ups and other interviews because it kind of opened up the conversation of the East, the West, the Shaolin philosophy, and just where the misinterpretations and myths come from. Today, I take a deep dive with Matt Jane on exactly that. We dive into where the reality is when you're in China, what the true philosophy is according to Matt Jane and the White Dragon. So this is a really exciting interview for me to do. Also, we've had so many requests to do a follow-up series with Matt Jane, to go to China to do these kind of things. We are working on it. And if you want to be a part of that process, go to our Patreon community. So it's patreon.com/Mulligan Brothers. And you can be part of the community and have those conversations with us and help create the content that you guys want to see. Anyway, before that, let's dive into this amazing episode with Matt Jane, AKA the White Dragon.
Here is like what I call the Sundar chamber. So Sundar is another system of Kung Fu from China, which just translates to free fighting. So just like karate translates into English as freehand as well, it's the same thing. So it's just the idea of using the more simplistic approach of traditional Kung Fu, punching and kicking, hitting bags, for the sake of fighting and sparring, So in here, we're just working on, just different techniques and movements. We have on this wall a very powerful quote: "I am strong because I know my weaknesses," which is a very important one because you can only be as strong as your weakest link. So understanding your weaknesses is very important. Otherwise, you can have, like, for example, a strong upper body, but if it comes specifically to fighting, we're talking about fighting, if your lower body is no good and you're not grounded, obviously that's where your opponent's going to take you down. So then you need to work on that. So that's just a quote that I like everyone to have in the back of their heads when they're training, And then on the opposite side,
Let's start from the bottom, because these are some incredible people.
These are okay. Yeah, this is like the legendary wall. So this is very typical, but not typical. So in most martial arts schools, you will see a wall of not fame, but of lineage, if you like. And it will show some of the teachers and the mentors. And that's exactly what we see here. However, it's a little bit, perhaps for some, out of context. These are my mentors, my teachers. These are people that influenced me in an extremely magical way. So we can start from the top here. And I love this photo. Obviously, I picked out these photos as well. This one, actually, this is one of the people that not everyone always gets. So who is this?
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, you got it. Because obviously, unusually, he's wearing a suit opposed to being in his boxing attire. And I just love this because it captures him on the flip side of what he was constantly judged for, or perhaps what he was seen for. He was seen maybe in today's time as the legendary boxer, I'ma show you how great I am, the very egotistical character. But here you see him in deep thought, looking very humble, but also very powerful at the same time. And growing up, seeing and hearing his voice was very empowering. And perhaps it was his poetry that engaged me, but I loved his words, I done wrestle with an alligator, tussle with a whale. It goes on, how does it go? I done hospitalized a brick. No. Yeah. How does it go? I done injured a stone. Right? I done injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so bad, I make medicine sick. Something like that. Again, don't quote me word for word, but those things were very powerful. Seeing documentaries, reading them in books as a kid, not having access to like an iPhone. Those were messages that would carry me forward on the basketball court, in the gym training. Those were things that were hugely powerful. Next up, a very powerful figure for me, MJ, shares the same initials, Michael Jackson. And this photo, do you know what era this is from?
I don't.
No, so this is actually from, and this is actually the bad music video. I'm bad, you know it. And it was so interesting for me growing up as a kid, that song in particular, just hearing a negative word being used in a positive way, obviously, because we had slang amongst ourselves, but then learning that someone as great as Michael Jackson on a public scale could also say things like that. Because, you know, growing up, you say, oh, that's sick. You know, your parents and teachers be like, don't use language like that. You know, it's not sick, it's good, you know. So to hear someone say it's bad, but meaning he's really good, I really felt a connection with that type of thing. And that pulled me in. And then again, I like to find lots of magic within the relationships I have with people. So that Bad album came out in 1988, which was when I was born. And I love the music video. With the music video, he created a whole movie called Moonwalker, which was a whole movie about the Bad album. It had all of the songs. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. It's epic. From Dirty Diana as the intro all the way through. It has the Bad music video, but actually it's the Bad music video as it was, but children acting it out.
Right, okay.
He does Speed Demon, where he turns into an animated character and dances. There was some great epic creativity there that really inspired me with my creativity and movement and expression. And his music still lives on. And yeah, I love the Billie Jean dance. I love the Dangerous dance, the Smooth Criminal, the Thriller. I can do them all. This guy, people get caught out a lot.
I didn't recognize this the first time you said, yeah.
So now you know.
Yeah.
So the second time you've been here, this is Steve Jobs. And of course, like Nike, you know, everyone has something to say, but then we're all wearing Nike trainers and we all got iPhones. So this guy, for me, is legendary. And this photo in particular is quite powerful. He's actually doing some Tai Chi. So obviously Tai Chi is part of the Kung Fu system, part of the Chinese martial arts. And Steve Jobs was very into spirituality. And he embodied that. He embodied that with his movement. He embodied that with his language. And we all know, legendary, he embodied that with his dress. You know, he was not someone to show off and have flaunting clothes and suits. He kept it very simple. And those were some of the Buddhist philosophies that he followed. Life is simple. And if you've read his books and you've been inspired by him, he's a great figure of motivation. Again, he was seen sometimes as quite egotistical, and, you know, he would attack people like Bill Gates, and he was very focused and determined, and he knew his greatness. So he wasn't ashamed of himself, but he also wasn't scared to voice his opinions. So he played a big role in my upbringing, and both my grandparents are graphic designers. So before, you know, Mac computers and Apple phones were popular, I had known and learned about Macintosh and Apple from living with them in California and, you know, learning about Photoshop on the original Mac computers that they used as graphic designers. Moving on, the next idol still, Michael Jordan. And I had mentioned to you before the movie that inspired me to play basketball. And it was one of the main sports that actually resonated with me. So being a youngster growing up in London, of course, football was something we did just naturally. But I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't bad at it, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. We played it just because we played it. And then Space Jam came out. Yeah. And as you can tell from the cartoons and the reference to graphic design, I've previously spoken about Looney Tunes and things like that, was something I loved. So Space Jam came out and it just blew me away. And obviously it was Michael Jordan playing Michael Jordan. So that was basically a entertaining way to teach me about this amazing individual, which I learned to be the legendary Michael Jordan, who shares my initials, MJ. 23 became my favorite number, along with 45 and obviously Kobe's number 8. But yeah, Michael Jordan, his philosophies, I had his books, I read about his story, his upbringing, and Space Jam was a videotape that would be played every week, multiple times. And had a huge influence in me, a huge influence. Next, this one is powerful. The Fearless Hyena, this movie, and this is Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan is probably the most iconic individual to me and the biggest influence. His his presence came secondary to Bruce Lee. It was after I was already engaged with martial arts. And I feel that initially, Bruce Lee, who I learned about in the movie The Dragon by Jason Scott Lee, his life story, which if you haven't seen, you should watch it. It was very entertaining and powerful, and there was lots of things I learned. Handstands, flicking up onto my feet, obviously some fighting skills, some flips, but it was more fighting. You know, so as a boy, you know, fighting was something that a lot of us are drawn to. So Bruce Lee was more about being the best fighter. You know, like, well, I'm Bruce Lee, I'm going to use this move so I can fight you. Whereas Jackie, when I got introduced to Jackie, it was with movies like The Young Master, The Drunken Master, The Fearless Hyena, and then some of his more comical movies like Wheels on Mills, where he's taking martial arts out of context and applying a comedy to it, applying not being the hero. So Bruce was always the hero, the best, whereas Jackie was always the underdog, and it was fun and it was creative, and it really allowed me to bond with utilizing the creativity from other people and put it into martial arts practice. And I felt that there was a connection there. I would recreate his fight scenes, his movie skits. My mom really appreciated him because she could see a non-violent approach to martial arts, which even today, again, through my daily interaction on Instagram, is still something people find challenging. Every comment that's negative is always about fighting. Yeah, but can this guy fight? He wouldn't last a second in the ring. You should go to UFC and test your skills. Like, for me, it was never about fighting, but conquering myself. So Jackie was someone who embodied that for me and for my mom. And I learned a lot. He was definitely one of my biggest teachers in terms of skills. So using the play pause function on a lot of his videos, I would learn styles, movements, and techniques. You know, he was really encouraging. The next one, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was more of an underdog on my list of role models. He was someone that I hid from my parents, in particular my mom. And you've learned a little bit about my mom, and obviously the more we talk, the more you'll learn. But Mike Tyson, in this time, was a very negative individual. The way he spoke, the way he behaved, the things he was getting in trouble for. He was someone that my mom disliked greatly, and she wasn't someone that she wanted. He wasn't someone she wanted to be a role model of mine. However, we all experience challenges and hardships. And I was experiencing things with my stepdad. I was experiencing things with my peers at school, perhaps my teachers, perhaps just society in general, which I felt that some of his negativity and aggressive expression tools felt and resonated with me. The idea of, having the power was quite dominating. And I feel that was probably his weakness in that sense, is that the people around him, were motivating him with money and girls and fame to become that character, because now he's a very cool dude, and he's obviously mellowed down, and that's because he's reached kind of his level. But I feel here he thought he had, but he was being controlled by others. And the negativity that we saw discussed in things like I'm gonna eat your children, and all of those things, being in trouble with multiple girls and rape, those were just him being a product of his environment. And I think he's a great man. And even when I look back on him, the way he moved, which was a reflection of his upbringing, that struggle, that darkness that we speak about. As an athlete, he was top. And that was really inspiring to see and learn, And I remember sneakily watching the Mike Tyson movie about his life. And again, I wasn't allowed to watch it. It was like an 18 or whatnot. But it was fascinating just to see his story come to life. Next, this is a very important figure in my life, Tupac. So out of everyone so far, I would say Steve Jobs obviously lives in my pocket, I'm always utilizing his technology. Michael Jordan, I play basketball with my son all the time, and that's because of him. Michael Jackson, I constantly listen and more so dance opposed to listen to his music. I still dance often. Jackie, as the trend goes, movies just aren't so popular. So he doesn't make many movies anymore like he did, but his old movies live on and I still use them for inspiration. We've just spoke about Tyson, but Tupac, he has continuously been, since I was very young, about 8 years old, a very powerful individual through his music, of course, but the message specifically that he was bringing, and then learning about his story, learning about his message. He's a fascinating individual who, if you watch his interviews as a young'un, had such a powerful mind and really had the motivation and passion to want to change poverty for his community, which at the time was, you know, the poor Black people of America. And he did his best, but again, like Tyson, he was drawn in to a lot of the negativity, the East and West Coast wars, which eventually left to his death. And I mean, you go from when he's talking about, one moment he's talking with a smile on his face about how, you know, how can we change the world? And he's so happy, and he's talking about developing communities and how we need to redirect money and things like this. To the next minute, you know, that's why your wife, you motherfucker, like the Hit 'Em Up soundtrack, like he was definitely a puppet being pulled around by people above him. And I feel very sad for that. But again, like Tyson, those pieces of music still, for me, growing up during his era, live in my pocket. And his soundtracks, his music get me through workouts daily.
Yeah.
His words, some of them better than others, are so powerful. I mean, one track that I love, and I always use the phrase "until the end of time," you know, the last verse, something along the lines of, who am I to say, who's to say if I'm a right or wrong, to live my life as an outlaw all along, remain strong in this planet full of player haters. They conversate, but death row full of demonstrators. And in the end, drinking Hennessy made all my enemies envy me. So cold when I flow, eliminate them easily. Fall to the knees, they plead for the right to bleed while begging me to keep the peace. Like that little soundbite there, for me, like when I listen to it, really resonates. And growing up, before I had a way to channel my aggression, listening to that type of music fueled me. You know, that line that they conversate, but death, what was it? I just said it. But in the end, drinking Hennessy made all my, they conversate. I forgot what I just said, but the line about people talking behind your back about you, but then, you know, you've got to demonstrate, was just the phrase, you know, your actions speak louder than words. But, you know, going to school on the train and listening to this type, that's what I needed. You know, you don't hear that from a lot of other people. You know, so I try to give my son these type of messages all of the time, because we need to hear these things. If we don't, if we're constantly told it's okay, just behave yourself, like that's not what we always need. Sometimes we just need an outlet. And for me, Tupac was that connection, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people might tend to disagree because it's aggressive messaging, but I completely agree.
But you have to go deep. You can't stay on the surface, because if you do and you pick out the Hit 'Em Up track, you know, and that's why Joe Bitch, you motherfucker, like if you just pull that out, suddenly he's a negative individual. And that's how we can manipulate people.
I think all of these guys on here, absolutely everybody, you can, I don't know about Jackie and Bruce, but you could come at from a negative stance if you wanted to. You really can. I think it's really important. It's down to the person to be able to pull out positives of people. Not everybody's perfect.
Well, exactly. Well, that's another thing, is that we are perfectly perfect with imperfections.
Yeah.
And that is what it's all about. I mean, Jackie Chan, again, is probably the most legendary icon for me. And I'm trying to think right now. I haven't got anything. But Bruce Lee, you know, he was said to be on cocaine. He was said to have an affair. And Jackie Chan too. There was lots of negative things about these individuals as well. But it's how we shed light on them and how we perceive them in the public eye. And that's why I prompt anyone who disagrees or doesn't fully understand Tupac first to go check him out and see his background, see his upbringing, see what he came from, and see his interviews where he's being spoken to like this. He's on the beach or he's sitting down and he's just straight up chilling, talking power, talking sense. And you can't just take one line from his music and take it out of context.
Yeah.
That's the line. They conversate, but death row full of demonstrators. In the end, drinking Hennessy made all my enemies envy me. Fall to their knees and plead for the right to bleed. But yeah, it's like when I hear tracks, I'm thinking of the lyrics there, but I can like almost every one of his tracks. If you play the track, I know the lyrics, you know, and that helps get me through the workouts. These for me, I tell you what they are. They're like sutras. So in the Shaolin Monastery, one thing that we do in the morning at 4:30 and at 4:30 in the afternoon is morning prayer. And for me, again, rather than just following the dictatorship of the culture, I learned the concept. And I realized it was something I was already doing. So in the morning at the temple, you wake up, you go to the ceremony, and there's a lot of different, it's 45 minutes long. So there's a lot that you either have a book or you memorize it. I can't read Chinese, so I would listen and learn. So I know a lot of them. And it will go on, and you walk around and around, and then there's some basic ones I did in the interview. Namo Amito. That's a simple one. But for me, music, not just Tupac, because I only had cassette, so I only had a limited amount of music. Tupac, 50 Cent, Ludacris, Nelly, a handful of others. They became pieces of music which were sutras to my ears. So when I went to school, which took me about an hour to an hour and a half, I couldn't hear the music. So I wouldn't know I've listened to the whole album. Yeah. It was just there. And it was keeping me focused, because otherwise you just fall asleep and you're just out of the moment. Whereas it kept me focused. It kept me zoned in. It kept, like, I would get to school. On the way, I had my cards. As soon as I got to school, boom, to the basketball court before school. So it gave me the drive in the morning to be awake and raring to go. So those were the sutras. So again, it's about finding the context in your own life. You don't need to go to the Shaolin Monastery or any Buddhist temple to try and learn a language you don't know, to walk around with guys that are not your friends and think that's going to give you inner peace. It won't. It's going to give you frustration. It's going to give you misunderstanding, because you're not from that culture. You can experience it, but you shouldn't go there with the expectation that you'll take something. You've got to be who you are, a human being. And for me, I was the embodiment of an era where I listened to cassettes of his music on repeat, and it got me through my days, you know? Next, Bruce Lee. We've already spoken a lot about him, and that's the scene where he's in Enter the Dragon, where he's fighting Sammo Hung, and Bruce Lee was iconically renowned for these gloves, which were like the modern day MMA style gloves rather than the big boxing gloves. And he was bringing the idea of free fighting rather than it being traditional style kung fu or boxing. It was more about expressing yourself. And that whole scene at the beginning is the scene where he fights Sammo Hung before he speaks to the abbot of the Shaolin Temple with the question of, what is the highest technique you hope to achieve? And Bruce, in his script writing and movie play, really brought to life, again, the metaphors and legends of Kung Fu and how that particular art form can be used and embodied to help you live a meaningful life. You know, not everyone needs to be like Bruce Lee and needs to be like me, but he is a martial artist, and that's what I am. I'm a martial artist. So through martial arts and through these concepts and ideas, some of them myth, some of them legends, some of them fact, we can live meaningful, happy lives and share that with our communities. But I've spoken so much about him. I think we'll leave it there. But yeah, I love this photo of him. Very cool. And Enter the Dragon was probably the movie where he was the most shredded That's not the most shredded photo of him from the movie, but he was impeccable shape.
Yeah.
But it was during the Enter the Dragon, just as it finished, is when he died.
Right.
Actually on a resting bed during shooting. You know, he apparently he took some paracetamol, had a headache, went to sleep and never woke up. So maybe he pushed his body too far. You know, he died at 32. So in that sense, that's not someone I want to look up to. I don't want to, I'm 36 now. I didn't want to die at 32, but there's positives and negatives in everyone. Yeah. And here's one again, this dude smoking. Do you know this guy?
I don't know.
So this is Frank Sinatra. So Frank Sinatra, New York, New York, you know, all of these songs, the classic songs, which I got more from my mom. He's like one of the originators of Hollywood, you know, bringing dance and music to motion picture and really going all out with routines and choreography and storytell on levels that had never been seen before his era. And his hat, his clothing, his dance style was a great influence on Michael Jackson and his style. I mean, the whole Smooth Criminal and the hat swag came from his era. And he's a big name. And there's a few more. There's Fred Astaire, amongst others. There's movies like that I would watch from my mom, because my mom is from California and she would watch these movies from her upbringing. Make 'em laugh. And there's a scene, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. And we're talking about 70 years ago or longer. And this dude's doing wall flips off of the wall and he's doing them constantly. And then it's a gig, you know, it's a skit. And then finally the last one is a paper wall and he like flies through the wall. And it's just like, again, a lot of people, my peers growing up in London, had no idea of who these dudes were. I was watching these movies and people were doing wall flips. They were doing all sorts of like moonwalks and like crazy jazz moves, which took a huge amount of athleticism, skill, precision, and they had a lot of swagger. You know, like their whole drip was just on point. It influenced people like Michael Jackson, who in turn influenced thousands and obviously influenced me. So yeah, he goes up on the wall just as a cool dude that I look up to, and I still watch his dance and just think, wow, you know, it's something. I recreate his dance movements as well. It's something I do with my wife and I do for my wife in celebration of her birthdays and our anniversaries. And I like just to recreate and be inspired by, you know, these iconic individuals. And then last but not least, Goku, of course, the legend. And I really feel that I took, you know, a big step with this one. And I take these steps, you know, like the step on the moon, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I feel like the steps that I make in my life are going to have an impact in the future. So typically you go into, especially a white person, they've got a kung fu school, a big kung fu school. They're going to have these Chinese masters up on the wall, and this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so. And like, I feel that's very rigid and I don't feel that's the truth. Yeah. So I wanted to be very truthful here. And then on top of it being truthful, this dude is a cartoon character, but nevertheless, the influence he had and the script writing that went into the show was so powerful. I mean, the quote that I use the most, which is, I do not master martial arts to win fights, but I do it to conquer myself, comes from Master Roshi in the Dragon Ball series. So Goku, his character, his aura, his mentality and approach to training, his physique, everything aside from the hair, of course, I embody. And for me, as a father, as a martial artist, as a man, he is someone I look up to greatly. So when I say taking a big step, to have a school, a martial arts temple, a place, a hub where I've got a lot of attention, you know, you guys, I have BBC here, I've had tons of documentaries. To put this guy up on the wall is quite a step to say, oh my God, this Kung Fu master has a cartoon character up on the wall, because I want to show the truth and I want to be honest. This is one of my influences. So he does deserve a spot up on the wall, because without him, there would be no me. And I feel that that's a very important message, that we can learn a lot from our upbringing, you know. And there's lots of cartoons: Iron Fist Chimmy, Thundercats, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, I learned the ninja size and the more of the nunchucks and the staff from Donatello, Michelangelo. You know, all of these characters are very important and they shouldn't be washed away. We should maintain memory of our childhood and what influenced us to be the men we've become. And yeah, many cartoon characters, but he is the iconic one. So I felt he deserved, because there's more than just 10 people in my life who influenced me, but I really felt that Goku deserved a spot on the wall. And, you know, as a father, he was, out of all of these people, they've played an influence in me. My son loves Michael Jackson, loves basketball, has the iPhone, doesn't know too much about Ali, loves Jackie, but not so deep, loves Tyson because who doesn't? You know, everyone knows Tyson. Tupac, he listens to his music, but the connection's not the same. Bruce, he knows who he is, but the gap is there. Frank Sinatra, there's no connection. It's just, you know, who's this dude? But Goku, he was a tool for the relationship that makes the bond between me and my son so powerful. You know, from Dragon Balls to the cartoon, to posters, to drawing, to the quotes and story tell. This figure has helped me become the father I am more than anyone else that I could think of. Yeah, so he deserves the spot.
You guys know how much I love Huel. This is the best introduction into Huel in my opinion. It's their protein bundle, which makes a great Christmas gift. Huel have just sent me one of these, and I want to show you exactly what's in it. 8 bottles of the ready to drink in every single flavor. This is my absolute favorite. You get one of their standard shakers, Huel protein, and Huel Black Edition, my absolute favorite. 40 grams of protein, 26 vitamins and minerals, and slow release carbs to give everything that you need to get on with your day. Huel are doing exclusive offers right now. So if you check out the top pinned comment and use the link in the description, you can get exclusive offers from discounts to free t-shirts, free shakers. And if you use their subscription service, you get 10% off every single order. So go to the link down below. Thank you, Huel, for supporting this video.
The courtyard is like my treasure. I spend a lot of my efforts and time have gone here. Obviously, originally it was just this main building, and this whole area. I have some photos. Maybe I'll send them. I'll tag you in. And the gates actually were over to the side.
Like designing all this, did you buy this pre-made? Did you buy it?
No, I made everything. So everything you see here is handmade by me, aside from things like these concrete sculptures. So that roof actually is only about 4 years old. And that roof is crazy because how that came about was the original, my logo for the temple, and that line represents 10 years. That was the gates.
Yeah.
So what happened originally, this place was also called a Shaolin temple. It was called the Shaolin Temple Chesant. But as I've discussed, you know, over time, as I've grown, I'm not a Shaolin monk. I'm not only tied to Shaolin. I didn't want to have the label. And what happened, where did the brand Temple come about? It's kind of like Apple, you know. What happened, people would just say, oh, I'm going Temple. Oh, I'll meet you at the Temple. So it became very popular and it was known as Temple. So we decided that this is the Temple, you know, and that's our brand. So that's the brand, Temple. Yeah, like Apple, Temple. And the roof, again, this original roof gate structure was just getting old. And it was getting moldy. So I decided to rebuild it, and this time build a Kung Fu Panda inspired roof.
Brave, man, dude.
And it was upside down on the floor here. So it looked like a boat.
A boat, yeah.
So people were coming to class and were like, you know, they call me Darga, which means big brother.
Okay.
They said, Darga, why are you building a boat? Like, that's not going to hold water. Like, that's not going to work. So no one knew. So I cracked on with it. And then, you know, as crazy as I am with everything else, believe it or not, 2 of us, 1 each side. We got it here. Boom, shoulder press, climbed up, hooked it on there. Yeah, I got it all on a time lapse somewhere.
Crazy, man.
And then we put it up.
Let's have a look at it.
And then, and I did it all on the floor.
Yeah.
So that I could paint it red and green like already. So it was
You're crazy. That's, impressive.
So the original structure, you can see, the wood I did a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's just that roof that's sitting on top.
Yeah.
And obviously we attached it all. So yeah, and then this was my first ever building project.
Yeah.
Built that from the ground up. And that's about 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
And the roof finally caved in just a few months ago. But learning, you don't need to be great to start. You need to start to be great. So
Well, when you built it, you know how to fix it. Like,
exactly. So then that's the second building I built, and that's a little bit more structurally sound. And then the third building is along the side here, which is that Sundar Hall with all the artwork, with all the idols on the wall. That was the last build, and that's the most structurally sound.
Did you do? Did you break through the walls? Did you make?
Yeah. So there was just a garage.
Yeah.
So there was just an empty space and a garage and a fire exit at the back.
Yeah.
So we just built, and then it became the Sundar Chamber. And literally from that moment, once we complete that, which was like in 2014, building was complete. Like there's no more space to build anything. The only space is to go up, and then obviously you need planning permission. And then a few years ago when I did that roof, I did this balcony. I do want to knock out my windows up there and create doors like those. So because now I have to climb out the windows to use the balcony. But I would like to just have doors that just pop open. We can walk outside as well. The gates were a very important feature that again I built. So it's just timber. It's all, again, I look at things like Lego. So all of this was just Lego for me.
Yeah.
All my childhood building Lego was about building a temple. But yeah, let's go outside and then come in and have a look at what it looks like. So the gates, and like I said, they used to be here when we moved in, but I wanted everything to be centralized. Originally, there was no doors. It was a garage door as well, at the main door, but I wanted everything to line up. And also I feel that there's the symmetry and the atmosphere is part of what gives me life. So it's a privilege for me every morning to arrive here and have the feeling of just approaching the gates, looking up and opening. And every time I step in, it's like a blessing. And I remind myself of the life that I have, the life I've created, and the life that I want to continue to experience. And it just, I never really have hardships or a bad day. I come in, even the roof falling down, again, it's just a challenge. Like T was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, but now we get to fix it together, and you get to learn how to fix a roof, because one day you might have a garden, have a shed or something, and it breaks and you're going to want to fix it. So these are life skills. These are not negatives. These are merely challenges that make us stronger. But yeah, every time I come in here, I just feel very at peace, very at peace. And I love it. When you close the gates, people have seen my videos, and when you're standing where we are and the gates are closed, you could literally be in China. And that's what I wanted to do for myself and for the community who's involved here, was for those who can't go to China, but to have a piece of China right here, so that there literally is no excuses, only adjustments. We're not in China, we don't have a temple. Well, let's build our very own temple and create the lives through the power of Kung Fu that we want. And that's what we do here.